Good morning, kindergarten. My name is Mrs. G, and I am a kindergarten teacher at Apache. Some of you might recognize me, some of you may wonder who I am, but I do teach kindergarten, and I am next door to Mr. Parks and across from Mrs. Marta. Okay, so that might make it familiar. I have the cactus classroom. This is going to be new, and it might be challenging, but we shall see. This is what we are going to be doing until further notice. So I just wanted to let you know that it's okay. I know it's different and it might be scary to some of you, but this virtual experience is kind of scary to Mrs. G too. So I don't want you to feel like you're the only one, because you're not the only one. So this is how it's going to work. So I'm just basically going to teach you from here. And it's not gonna be too long. It's just gonna be short little lessons, and then after each lesson you will have a little assessment, and it's nothing to be worried about, that you can do with your mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or whoever's taking care of you. So this is gonna be our new norm for a little while, okay? But I want to begin, and I want to let you know that all your teachers miss you, and we all love you, and we can't wait to see you, and we can't wait till we're together again. Our classrooms are empty without you, and I know that they miss you too. So I'm gonna go ahead and begin, and I'm just gonna basically do a quick review of what we've been learning in core knowledge, just to refresh your brain a little bit. I know that before spring break, we learned about the bricklayers and the masons and the carpenters. And if you remember, so the bricklayers, the masons, and the carpenters, do you remember who they were or what their jobs were? Can you think about that for a minute? I'll give you a minute to think about it, okay? And if you do know what it is, you can go ahead and tell your mom or dad or whoever's with you, or maybe your brother or sister. You can tell them what you've learned about the bricklayers, the masons, and the carpenters. And Mrs. G will give you a minute to do that, okay? And if you don't remember, it's okay. Mrs. G will remind you, okay? It's been a long time that we've been back in school, so I know you may have forgotten. That's okay. Mrs. G will remind you, okay? So we also learned about 3 different materials, okay, that were used by tradespeople to build houses, fences, and walls in colonial America. And do you remember what those were? Can you remember what those materials might have been? I'll also give you a minute to think about that. So there were 3 different types of materials that tradespeople used to build houses and fences and walls back in colonial America, okay? So if you said stone, you are correct. If you said brick, you are correct. And if you said wood, great job. And I know Miss Marta says this all the time. Miss G says it a lot too, but you can kiss your brain if you got it correct. So you don't know what that means. That means if you get an answer correct and Mrs. G says you are correct, you're just gonna kiss your brain because you got it right. And Mrs. G always says, if you didn't get it right, you still kiss your brain because you tried. And that's all we ask for, right? So kiss your brain if you got it right, and kiss your brain if you got it wrong because you tried, okay? So many years ago, there were tradespeople who were experts in using 3 of those materials, okay? So those materials that we just talked about, okay? And those who worked with stone were called masons, and those who worked with bricks were called bricklayers, and those who worked with wood were called carpenters, okay? And we've learned so far how all the tradespeople in a town were important in their own ways, okay? Because everyone had a special job to do. Everybody back then had their own job, and it was very important. Each job was important, okay? So today we're going to learn about the blacksmith. So that's what our lesson's going to be today. So that was just a little quick review of what we learned about, okay, before spring break. And now we're going to go ahead into our new lesson about the blacksmith, okay? So Mrs. G, this is what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share with you a picture, and it's going to show up on my screen, and hopefully you'll be able to see it. And then you're going to look at the picture And you're gonna just think about, what do you see in this picture? What do you notice about this picture? What are some things that you see that maybe are familiar to you, or maybe they look new to you? So let me go ahead and pull that up for you right now. And then I will go ahead and share that screen with you. 1 second. All right, so you should be able to see my screen here. Give me 1 second. Again, this is all new to us. We're trying to navigate it. Okay, so if you see on our screen, it's just the title page. Okay, so here's the picture that I want you to look at. Okay, this picture, okay, what do you notice about this picture? Okay, I'll give you a minute to look around. There's lots of things that you can see in this picture. You can look at the tools, you can see what the workers are doing, maybe what it's made out of. So I want you to go ahead and take a look at those. And I will give you a few minutes to look at those. Some really interesting things in there. Maybe some things that you've never saw before. And maybe there are some things that, oh, you're like, I know what that is. I recognize that I have it in my house, or I've seen it at school. All right, well, here we go. Here's our lesson, okay? So make sure you put your listening ears on and you can listen, okay? Blacksmiths were some of the most important tradespeople in town because they made all the tools people needed to do their jobs, okay? If you look on that table over there, you might see some tools that they might have used, okay? They made chisels for masons and hammers and nails for carpenters. They made household items like kettles, cooking pots, candle holders, and other utensils, okay? And they also made horseshoes, okay? If you don't know what horseshoes are curved pieces of metal nailed to horses' feet to protect them. So if you were to go see a horse, or maybe some of you might even have a horse, I know there's lots of horses in Buckeye here, but if you were to go see a horse and you were to lift up their leg and turn their leg over or upside down, okay, you would see their hooves, right, at their feet, and you would see a horseshoe, okay? And that is just curved metal that protects their feet. So that is what a horseshoe is, okay? You'd be surprised of the number of things people use in everyday life that came out of the blacksmith's shop, okay? So do you know what any of these things in this picture are made of? So if you look at this picture, okay, what are some things that you see, and maybe what are they made of, okay? Look at these here on the table, okay? There's a hammer, maybe, a saw, some other things, okay? All right, we're gonna move on to our next picture, okay? Next picture, here we go. All right, so we have this picture here, okay? And this is a blacksmith iron, okay? And to do his work, a blacksmith needs 5 basic things. He needs some metal to work with, something to heat the metal in, and something to move the hot metal from one place to another, and something to put it on, and something to hit it with, okay? If you don't know what metal is, okay, so what metal is, it's a hard, shiny material that it can conduct, it can carry heat, and it can be melted and reshaped. So you can actually melt metal. You wouldn't think so, but you can. And you can melt a piece of metal and you can reshape it into something different. So that's pretty neat, right? When I was young, I didn't know that you can melt metal. So that's something new that you learned, okay? So blacksmiths in early America worked mostly with iron, okay? Iron is a very strong metal, but when it is heated in fire, it becomes soft, okay? That means it can be shaped into whatever shape the blacksmith wants. So if the blacksmith wants to shape it into a heart, it could do that. Now, I don't know that he would do that back then, but he could. He could shape it into whatever he wanted, okay? and that's, that's iron. Okay, so the next picture Miss G is going to show you is, all right, so if you look at this picture, I want you to just take a look at it and maybe tell your mom or dad what you think it might be, or whoever's with you, whoever you're with, maybe tell them what you think this picture might be of. All right, so these are actually coals, so red hot coals. So you think they're cold, or do you think they're hot? By looking at the picture, what would you think? If you said hot, you are correct. It's hot, okay? To heat the iron, okay, a blacksmith used a special oven or fireplace, and it was called a forge. So that's another vocabulary word of yours. So far we had horseshoes, and our vocabulary we had metal, okay? And now our new word is forge, okay? And forge is the blacksmith's oven or fireplace, okay? So that's what forge is, okay? Most forges were simply oven or fire pits, okay, like the ones in the first picture, so that the blacksmith could work closely and easily, okay? The most important thing was that the fire burned hot, so hot that it could melt the metal. So that's how hot it is, okay? It can melt the metal, okay? So this is your red hot coals, okay? Our next picture, Miss G is going to show you. Go ahead and take a look at this picture. What do you notice? I'll give you a minute to go ahead and look at that picture to see what you might see. Maybe something that looks familiar to you or something new. All right. So once his forge was hot enough, the blacksmith would put a piece of iron in it. Okay, and because the forge was so hot, he had to use tongs. Now, tongs might sound familiar to you. You actually might have some tongs in your house, in your kitchen, and we use them to pick up food with. Okay, so you might actually have some tongs. Maybe mom or dad might be able to show you, if they have some, what tongs are. Okay, because this is what they used. Okay, because it was so hot, they couldn't use their hands. They had to use tongs to pick up the pieces, okay? So tongs have two long metal arms connected by a hinge, okay? So they're connected, okay? And by squeezing, so they would squeeze them, they would hold them and squeeze them. You can grab things without using your hands. And that's essentially what they did, because it was so hot, they had to use it. They couldn't use their own hands. Okay, you can see the blacksmith using tongs, okay, if you look here, okay, these are his tongs that he's using. Hopefully you can see the arrow Mrs. G is pointing to. Again, we're all learning here. Hopefully this is working. But these are tongs, okay, and that's what he's using, okay? You can see him using the tongs in the picture, and tongs were very essential. They were a very essential tool for blacksmith, and they were almost like a second pair of hands to him. So there's another vocabulary word, essential. Say that with me. Say it out loud. I can't hear you, but I know that you're going to say it. So say essential with Mrs. G. Essential. Okay? And if you don't know what essential means, it's another vocabulary word, new one for you. It means that something that is necessary and important. Okay? So something that you couldn't live without, or something that you need. It's a necessity, it's necessary, and it's important, okay? And a blacksmith, he couldn't do his job without them. So a blacksmith, if he didn't have the tongs, this tool, he wouldn't be able to do his job, okay? Because then everything would be so hot, he had to use his hands, and while he burned himself. So he needed these tongs, this special tool, which is called a tong, to do his job. That's why it was very essential for him to have the tongs, okay? All right, so the blacksmith would leave the iron in the forge until it was red hot, meaning that it actually got so hot that it turned bright red in the fire. Then he'd pull it out using his tongs again to keep from burning his hands. Okay? And then after quickly removing the red hot piece from the fire, he placed it on the anvil. So that's a new word, anvil. Say anvil with me, anvil. And if you don't know what anvil is like a heavy steel iron block, and it's got a flat top, okay, which is right here, you can see it here. It's got a flat top, and sometimes it's got concave sides, and typically pointed, a pointed end on which the metal can be hammered or shaped. So that is what he's using. He's placing it on top of the anvil, okay? All right, so there's the blacksmith using his tongs, his tool, on the anvil, okay? And then our next picture, okay, you see here, all right, is the blacksmith shaping a red hot horseshoe, okay? So as long as the blacksmith kept the metal hot, he could shape it however he liked. He could make the metal longer or shorter, thicker or thinner, okay? Meaning really, really thick, like a little bit heavier, a little bit, okay? Or thinner, really, really like skinny, okay? He could bend it and mold it into any special shape he wanted to. If he wanted to make that into a star, he could, okay? In this picture, you can see how the blacksmith is shaping a horseshoe, okay? So if you look here, he's shaping this horseshoe, okay? And when he was happy with the size and shape, so when he said, okay, I think this is a good shape, I think this is a good size, okay? Then he would go ahead and he would let the iron cool, so that the iron cool, and then sometimes by plunging it back into a bucket of water so it could harden, because it was nice and soft, so they had to put it in water so it could harden, okay? So this is a horseshoe, okay? That's what protects the horse's feet. Remember, that was our new vocabulary word in the beginning of our lesson? So this is what a horseshoe is, okay? And it protects, it's a piece of metal, and it helps protect the horse's feet, okay? So because a blacksmith lifted hammers and heavy iron pieces all day long, he was usually one of the strongest, toughest men in town. Okay, a blacksmith probably had more than his share of scars and burns from the hot metal he handled every day. So a blacksmith is very important to our world, okay? It's a very important job. He's one of the hardest workers, okay, the blacksmiths are, okay? All right, our next picture are blacksmith's tools. So we're gonna learn about the tools that some of the blacksmiths use, okay? So blacksmiths were often thought of as clever and resourceful people, meaning that they were able to figure out how to fix things and make things work. Okay, they were able to figure out everything. They were so smart, they were able to figure out how things work. Okay, if a person needed a special tool for a special job, chances were the local blacksmith could figure out and make and get whatever was needed. Okay, he just knew. He knew where everything was. Okay, so it's good to know a blacksmith if you do. So when we talk about blacksmith and we hear the word blacksmith, I want you guys to say that with me. Say blacksmith, blacksmith, okay? And if you might wonder, maybe wondering where the word blacksmith came from, okay? It actually comes from the word smite. So say that word with me, smite, okay? Which is another word for hit, okay? So meaning smite is like you hit something, okay? And iron, since iron is black, so a blacksmith is a person who smites or hits black metal for a living. And that's where the word blacksmith came from, okay? All right, so, yes, so I already said that. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and we are just gonna go over our vocabulary, our new vocabulary words, okay? So we learned about the definition, or we talked about the definition of a horseshoe, okay? So think about a horseshoe, okay? Try to remember in our beginning of our lesson what Mrs. G told you what a horseshoe is, okay? So think about it in your brain. I'll give you 1 minute to think about that. A little bit less than a minute. Okay, and then our other word, so we had horseshoe, and then our another new word that we had was metal. Metal. So go ahead and think about metal and what that is, what metal is. Think about it in your brain, or you can tell your parents if they're there with you, or brother or sister or grandma and grandpa, whoever's with you, you can tell them what metal is. How about forge? Do you remember what forge was? Let's see if you can remember what forge was. I'll give you a hint. Forge is a place where you put something into to cook or to burn wood. Okay, how about tongs? How about tongs? What do you think? What can you remember about tongs? And then we had essential. Do you remember what essential was? What that meant? If something was essential, what did that mean? What does the word essential mean? And then we had the word anvil, okay? Then we went back, see if we can go back, okay? Do you remember? This was the anvil, okay? So that's what the anvil is, just to refresh your brain a little bit, okay? So those are our new vocabulary words. Every time we have core knowledge, there's gonna be some new words to learn about, and you're just gonna get so much smarter than you already are, okay? So here's what Mrs. G would like you to do. I know that in Mrs. G's class, we do a think, pair, share. And in Mrs. G's class, we have peanut butter and jelly partners. So we have one scholar who's the peanut butter, and then another scholar who's their partner is the jelly. And then I tell them to get together, and then I tell them what to talk about, and then they're gonna share with each other what I say, okay? So whatever question I ask, then they would share and they would talk. So being that we're not with each other, and it's really sad, we do miss you and we miss having you in class. Being that we're not together, you can go ahead and maybe partner up with maybe your brother or your sister or mom or dad or aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, whoever's with you, okay? And I want you to think about this. I want you to share, okay? What do you think about this question, okay? So we've learned that the blacksmith was one of the most important tradespeople in town because he made tools for everybody else. We learned that he was so important because he made all of the tools for everybody else, okay? I want you to think about maybe someone in this world, someone who has a job that you think is so important, okay? What job do you think is so important for other people that maybe help people? What's so important? So I want you to share that with your family, and I want you to talk about it, and then you can get back to me about what you share, or your parents can get back to your homeroom teacher about what you shared. But here is your assessment for this lesson, okay? For your assessment for this lesson, so you're gonna go ahead and here's how it's gonna work. So every lesson Mrs. G does, you're gonna have a little assessment. It's nothing too big, nothing too crazy, something small that just lets us know that you understand our lesson for the day, okay? And so what you're gonna do is you're gonna either answer the question, you can use a whiteboard, you can be creative, you can use paper, you can use crayons or markers on a piece of paper. If you have a chalkboard, you may do that. And then your parents will take a picture of your answer or a video, whatever you want, and then you will send it to your homeroom teacher, okay? So for your assessment on this lesson, you have two options, okay? You can go around your house and look for things that are metal, okay? You learned what metal is. So maybe you might have some things in your house that are metal, okay? I want you to find 3 things that are metal in your house, and then I want you to draw a picture, Draw a picture of them. And then have your mom take a picture or your dad take a picture of you and then go ahead and send it to your homeroom teacher. Okay, that is one option. The other option that you can do for your assessment is you can go ahead and draw 3 pictures of things that are essential. Okay, that's a new word. Okay, so we talked about what essential means. So I want you to draw 3 pictures of things that are essential. And then you can go ahead and, again, mom or dad can go ahead and take a picture of your answers and you can give them to your homeroom, send them to your homeroom teacher. Okay? All right, I believe that is it for today. That is our first online virtual lesson. And I think it went pretty well. Very different. I miss seeing your faces out in the classroom in our little chairs, but this will have to do. I'm looking forward to seeing your answers for your assessment, and I will see you tomorrow. I hope that you learned about blacksmiths and I hope that you can take away some things from it, and maybe you can go ahead and tell somebody else about the blacksmiths. Okay? All right. Well, I will talk to you later. I hope that you have a really great day. Work hard, be kind, and Mrs. G will talk to you later. Bye.